Welcome to the Driving the World podcast series. I'm your host, Cully Holland. Today we have Anisha Hoffield, an application engineer from our Southeast Regional Engineering Group, and we're going to discuss some information our customers will need when contacting engineering. Hi, Anisha. Thank you so much for being on this week. So today we're going to be talking about some information that customers can have when either emailing or calling into regional engineering. So we're just going to dive right into that. And what are some things that customers could have ready, say, before even calling in, just so they have all their ducks in a row and it can be as useful as possible?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that is very important is the serial number or the SO number. The second thing is knowing your SCW plant that's closest to you,
Okay.
and knowing what territory you're in. And then the next is what group of people you're looking for, whether it's mechanical help, electrical help, IG, customer service in itself. Those are great things to get you to the location that you need to be without having been transferred a couple times.
Okay. So it sounds like we're really just trying to cut down customers being put on hold and just being transferred all over the place. So let's go ahead and start with the first thing you mentioned, which seemed rather important, and that was our serial number or an SO number. So if it's so important, where could our customers find it and how could they identify it against something maybe like a model number or something else they might be looking at for our unit?
Yeah, so both our serial numbers and model numbers are going to be at the top left-hand corner of the nameplates.
Okay.
Of the motor nameplates, gearbox nameplates, or in the VFDs.
Gotcha.
How you distinguish between the two is the serial number will be all numerical, and the part number will have letters in it.
Okay.
So serial number will be usually start with an 87 period or a 01 period,
Right.
followed by a list of numbers. The part number has letters. So think of it like KA47,
Okay.
different letters like that.
So the serial number is a unique identifier, and then the model number uses our nomenclature to kind of tell you basically what you're looking at.
Yeah. So the serial number is going to tell us more specifically about the unit, what the ratio is, what oil was put in it, even the brake voltage.
Okay.
We're going to get all that off of the serial number, and we can just put that into our system so we can help you a lot better.
Fantastic. So then moving forward, you said they need to make sure they're calling the right plant. And we know that there's, 5 facilities, including IG within the United States. So hopefully their DSM or district sales manager has given them information to call or numbers to call in for.
Mm-hmm.
But if they have not, they can also find that information on the website. And why is it so important that they call their quote unquote home plant per se?
Yeah, so it's important, especially if you need field service. So we try to troubleshoot everything over the phone if possible. But if someone needs to come out to you to help you with your problem or replace a brake, for example, it's going to be easiest if you're talking to your direct location rather than if you're talking to someone in the Southeast territory, but you're calling from Ohio.
Makes sense.
Because then we're just going to have to transfer you up to Troy, and we're going to have to kind of rehash the issues and get them familiar. Whoever's in Troy, we're going to have to get them familiar with what the issue is, why someone has to come out. So it's kind of just redundant. So knowing your home location will cut down on the redundancy, cut down on the transfers and
Just
everything.
keep everything efficient.
Yeah.
All right. So we've called in, we're at the right plant, and you were saying there's different things you could be calling in. So with regional engineering, it's probably broken down into 2 facets of mechanical and electronics.
Yep.
So let's say, how do you know what you need in each?
So mechanical issues are going to be things like gearbox failures, motor failures, competitor crossovers, new applications, different things like that. While electrical or electronics is going to be VFD issues or faults or control questions within their iPROS programs, different things like that.
Fantastic. So pretty much with a few little pieces of information, our customers are going to be able to call in and be prepared for a call and get an answer quickly.
Yeah.
So let's say, okay, they're not calling in, but they prefer to email. What are some things they should be aware of when emailing into their engineering support teams at SCW, just so that we can cut down on the back and forth and try and get them an answer as quickly as possible?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things is taking a picture of the nameplate and sending it in, or at least having that SO number that we about in the beginning.
Right. It seems very important.
Yeah. So those things are going to be most important. And then also a picture of the issue
Right.
or gearbox itself. When you're emailing in, those things will be very important to start with.
So 2 separate pictures, one picture of just a nameplate and then a picture of the actual unit in the application.
Yeah.
Those 2 separate pictures are worth a ton, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. And especially like just the header or the subject of the email alone,
Right.
specifying if it's mechanical versus electrical, and just a really clear statement of what the issue is or what you're seeking.
Okay, so when you're emailing in, it shouldn't just be pictures. It sounds like if you can at least summarize the problem or the issue of what's happening, we may be able to get a more directed answer right off the bat.
Yeah.
So we have that. And then earlier you mentioned crossovers. And I'm sure there's a lot of information that's needed with crossovers. So I would assume, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that most of these come through the email form.
Yep.
So what in an email from a customer would be helpful to make a crossover simple and painless?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things with crossovers is pictures of like unit. Just because we get to see then if it's inline, right angle, because whenever we just get part numbers, and if it's coming from Siemens, for example, if we just get a part number and they specify what competitor it is, we're having to do a lot of digging itself,
right,
to find out, is it inline, is it parallel, is it right angle? So that can cut down on a lot of time if we just have general pictures. The pictures also say if it's hollow shaft versus solid shaft.
right.
So pictures itself, again, pictures are worth 1,000 words.
I mean, I believe it. Yep.
Yeah.
And especially with a crossover, I wouldn't imagine that SEW is just going to drop in everywhere. So even if you do all of the digging on the back end and find what they had, we might not drop in perfectly. So a quick picture can get us on the right road a lot quicker.
Definitely. Other helpful things are the nameplates itself, because generally, especially with gearboxes, what most companies have, or this is the ratio on the gearboxes, and then the motors are going to have the horsepower.
Right.
So 2 most important things there. Next is just mounting position, how the conduit box is positioned, cable entry, shaft location. Different things like that is also generally helpful whenever doing crossovers. So, and like the more you can tell us about the gearbox, like the ratings from the customer or the competitors and the customer's ratings, that's going to be more helpful for us and avoid that back and forth.
Well, awesome. And I know that everyone's pressed for time. So if you can cut down the number of emails or phone calls you have to make, it's going to make everyone a lot happier.
And then also dimensional constraints.
Oh,
because
right.
like you mentioned, we don't just fit into every crossover. So say like they need a certain shaft size.
Right.
But our shaft size is not available, so we have to go to the next size up for the closest shaft size. But they cannot fit the gearbox physically into that space. We would like to know that.
That would be very helpful information to have. Yeah.
Definitely.
Very awesome. So we've covered phone calls and we've covered emails. I mean, pretty much, is there anything else that you, as an application engineer, would like from your customers to send you other than a thank you every once in a while?
Yeah.
In your emails or calls that would just make your life easier, or does that about sum it up?
Yeah, so it's really just a lot of it's troubleshooting when we get calls and emails, which is understandable. Either a gearbox breaks down or a VFD has an issues or faults. So with troubleshooting, the history leading up to the issue is super important.
Okay.
So mechanical wise, if they've experienced a lot of shock loading that they didn't account for some reason occurred, and then the gearbox broke.
Right.
Or VFDs, they had an electrical outage.
That'll do it. Yeah.
And electricity just turned back on instantly. Just making sure that there's not an arc or anything going through that. So that's just really helpful to know the history of what could lead up to the failure and if they know what caused the failure.
What was happening when it failed?
Yeah.
Always good information to have.
And just a really good description of the failure as well.
Right.
Calling and emailing in and just saying my gearbox is broken.
Not too helpful.
Not too helpful. So, just give me a little bit more advice on that.
Sounds good to me. So pretty much at the end of the day, it's just whatever you know, tell us, and we'll do our best to help you out.
Yeah, exactly. And then some other things for electrical wise that is also helpful is just knowing the type of VFD you're calling in for.
Yep.
Whether it's Moby Gear, Moby Tracks, different things like that, because we have different catalogs for each thing. So our electrical engineers will be able to figure out what you're talking about and find the catalogs if needed. A description of the application and the control side of the application as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure our customers will appreciate it, and our engineering support staff might appreciate even more if we can all pay attention to this one. So thank you so much for coming on, and I hope we can see you again soon.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.